single tune.
I married Bethany when we were both 25. Now we're 38, and everything I thought I knew about my life just imploded in the most devastating way imaginable. We met during our junior year at college at some random house party where she was laughing at something her friend said, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. We fell hard for each other, spent every possible moment together, and got married right after graduation in a small ceremony with our closest friends and family. Those early years were solid, the kind of relationship other couples envied. We both landed decent jobs and started building what I thought was going to be our forever life together, complete with dreams of kids, a house with a yard, and growing old together. Bethany worked at her father's small manufacturing company that specialized in industrial cable mounting equipment, while I climbed the ladder at a corporate firm downtown, handling logistics and supply chain management. The work was demanding but rewarding, and I genuinely enjoyed the challenge of solving complex operational problems. Then my department head quit unexpectedly after a disagreement with upper management, and since I was the only person who actually understood how everything worked, the intricate systems, the vendor relationships, the entire operational framework, they promoted me on the spot. The raise was substantial, the bonuses were generous, and suddenly I was pulling in about 3 times what Bethany made. I never made a big deal about it because money wasn't what mattered to me. What mattered was building a life with the woman I loved. We were 28 when our first daughter, Lily, arrived, and she was perfect. 2 years later, our second daughter, Emma, came along, and our family felt complete. Because Bethany worked for family, she had flexibility that most new moms don't get, which made those early parenting years manageable. She could leave early for doctor appointments, work from home when the girls were sick, and her dad was incredibly understanding about the demands of new motherhood. 5 years ago, Bethany's dad died suddenly. Heart attack at 59, no warning signs, just gone. One minute he was at his desk reviewing quarterly reports. The next minute he was on the floor and paramedics were rushing in. It devastated everyone, but it also left Bethany and her mom scrambling to figure out what to do with the business. Her mom, Patricia, had zero experience running a company. She'd been a homemaker their entire marriage and barely understood what the business actually did. So Bethany stepped up, and I was honestly impressed watching her transform from a mid-level employee into a CEO practically overnight. She worked insane hours those first few months, learning every aspect of the operation, meeting with clients, renegotiating contracts, and somehow keeping everything from falling apart. The business didn't just survive under her leadership, it actually thrived. Within 18 months, she doubled revenue, expanded into new markets, and her salary shot past mine by a significant margin. I was genuinely proud of her. Taking over your dead father's company and making it successful is no joke, especially in a male-dominated industry where clients initially doubted whether a woman could handle the technical aspects of industrial equipment manufacturing. But our daughters started feeling the impact of having 2 working parents who were never around. Lily started acting out at school, getting into arguments with other kids, and Emma became clingy and anxious whenever we tried to leave her anywhere. That's when we had the serious conversation about one of us staying home. We sat at the kitchen table one night after the girls were asleep, and Bethany made it clear that the company couldn't function without her. She was right. She'd built relationships with every major client, understood the technical specifications better than anyone, and had a vision for where the company was headed. It made financial sense for me to be the one to quit. I agreed without much hesitation. Our girls needed a parent present, and if I was being honest, I was getting burned out from the corporate grind anyway. The politics, the endless meetings, the pressure to constantly prove myself, it was exhausting. The idea of being home with my daughters, of being the one they ran to after school, of having dinner ready when Bethany walked through the door, it actually appealed to me. So I became a stay-at-home dad, and I threw myself into it completely. I handled everything: school drop-offs and pickups, packing lunches with little notes tucked inside, cooking every meal from scratch because I wanted my family eating healthy, cleaning, laundry, yard work, home repairs that I learned from YouTube videos, grocery shopping with detailed lists organized by aisle, scheduling appointments for everything from dentist checkups to parent-teacher conferences, the whole domestic operation. I became the room parent for both girls' classes, volunteered at school events, and made sure they got to every soccer practice, dance class, and play date. When Bethany came home from work, usually around 7 or 8 at night, I made sure she could just relax. I'd have dinner ready, something she loved, the house clean and organized, the kids bathed with homework done and laid out for her to review if she wanted. For a while, it worked beautifully. Bethany would come home exhausted, and I'd have a glass of wine waiting for her. We'd eat dinner as a family, she'd spend time with the girls before bed, and then we'd have our time together. I felt fulfilled in a way I hadn't expected. Sure, I missed the intellectual challenge of my corporate job sometimes, but watching my daughters grow up, being present for every milestone, every scraped knee, every breakthrough moment, that was worth more than any promotion. Then, about a year ago, something shifted in Bethany's demeanor, and I couldn't figure out what had changed. She started making these cutting remarks that felt designed to hurt. "Do you even do anything all day?" she'd ask, when she came home to find me folding laundry while the girls did homework at the kitchen table. Or, "Maybe you should get a real job instead of playing house," said with this dismissive tone that made my blood boil. It stung every single time because I was working my tail off to make sure she came home to a stress-free environment, and she was treating me like I was some lazy freeloader who sat around watching television and eating bonbons all day. I had a real job before, a damn good one where I was respected and valued, but I gave it up for our family, for her, for our daughters. The closeness dried up too, which was completely unlike her. She used to initiate all the time, pulling me into the bedroom with a mischievous smile. But suddenly she was never in the mood. Whenever I tried, she'd brush me off with some excuse about being tired or stressed or having a headache. I figured she was stressed from work and everything happening in the world. The pandemic had created supply chain nightmares for her company. So I tried to be understanding and supportive. I gave her space, took on even more of the household responsibilities, tried to anticipate her needs before she even voiced them. Nothing I did seemed to help, though. If anything, she seemed to resent me more with each passing week. Last weekend, we went to Lily's softball game. She'd been working so hard on her batting, and I was excited to see her play. I wanted to record some video for my parents who live across the country in Oregon and don't get to see the girls much. Technology has made it easier to stay connected, but it's not the same as being there in person. I'd forgotten my phone at home in my rush to get everyone out the door on time, so I asked Bethany if I could use hers. She'd been glued to it all morning anyway, barely looking up from the screen even when Lily was asking her questions about the game, so I figured it'd be good for her to take a break and actually watch our daughter play. She handed it over without much protest and went to grab snacks from the concession stand. While I was recording Lily at bat, watching her concentrate with that determined look on her face, a notification popped up from some messaging app I didn't recognize. The preview showed a message that made my stomach clench, something explicit that I couldn't quite make out. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, telling myself I was probably misunderstanding. What I found made my stomach drop and my hands start shaking. There was this guy from her company named Jackson, 8 years younger than me, and they'd been exchanging explicit messages, photos, and videos for what looked like months. The conversations were detailed and graphic, discussing things they'd done together, things they wanted to do when they could meet up next. They talked about how close they were, how much they needed each other, how alive he made her feel. And worst of all, they talked about me. He called me a pathetic house husband who couldn't satisfy his woman, said I was weak and emasculated, made jokes about me doing laundry and cooking while he was doing my wife. Bethany agreed with him, laughing about how I'd become so weak and useless, how I wasn't the man she married anymore, how I'd let myself go and become boring. She said things like, "He's more like a nanny than a husband, and I need a real man, not someone who bakes cookies for school fundraisers." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My vision actually blurred for a second. I quickly closed the app when I heard Bethany coming back, her footsteps crunching on the gravel, and pretended to keep filming. Though my hands were shaking so badly, I'm sure the footage was unusable. The drive home was silent except for the girls chattering in the back seat about the game, oblivious to the fact that their father's world had just shattered. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, trying to process what I'd seen, trying to figure out how long this had been going on, trying to understand how the woman I'd loved for 13 years could betray me like this. When we got back to the house, Bethany tried making conversation, asking if I'd gotten good footage, commenting on Lily's improved batting stance. But I couldn't bring myself to engage. I gave one-word answers and busied myself with putting away the girls' equipment and starting dinner. That night in bed, for the first time in months, she tried to initiate closeness. She rolled over and put her hand on my chest, started kissing my neck the way she used to. I told her I wasn't in the mood, my voice flat and cold. She snapped immediately, her entire demeanor changing. "If you're going to be moody and difficult, fine, go sleep on the couch." The anger in her voice was startling, like I'd committed some terrible offense by not wanting to be intimate with her. So I got up, grabbed my pillow, and moved to the guest bedroom. I've been sleeping there ever since, and she hasn't asked why, hasn't tried to talk about it, hasn't seemed to care at all. I felt completely lost, like I was drowning and couldn't find the surface. My wife was everything to me, the person I'd built my entire adult life around, and my daughters are my entire world. I didn't know how to process what I'd discovered, didn't know if I should confront her or gather more evidence or just pretend I didn't know and try to fix whatever was broken between us. First thing I did, after lying awake all night staring at the ceiling and running through every possible scenario in my head, was screenshot everything. Every message, every photo, every video, every cruel comment about me. I saved it all to a cloud account she didn't have access to, organized it by date, made sure I had irrefutable evidence of everything. Then I called a law firm in the next town over to keep things discreet. I didn't want anyone in our social circle finding out before I was ready. Didn't want the gossip mill starting before I had a plan. They had a last-minute opening due to a cancellation, so I dropped the girls at school, told them I loved them and to have a great day, and drove straight there with my stomach in knots. The attorney I met with was a woman named Rebecca Thornton, sharp and experienced, with kind eyes that had clearly seen plenty of situations like mine. I showed her all the evidence on my tablet, and she took her time reviewing it, her expression growing more sympathetic as she scrolled through the messages. When she finished, she looked up at me and said, "This is going to work heavily in your favor. Your wife has made some very poor choices, and the evidence you've gathered is comprehensive." She explained that since I'd left my career to raise our children and Bethany was barely home, having an affair and prioritizing this other guy over her family, she was going to lose big in the divorce. Rebecca outlined what I could expect: child support, alimony, the house, and Bethany would have to cover the mortgage as long as the girls lived there. She also mentioned we might be able to secure additional funds, since I'd been out of the workforce for years and would need retraining to become employable again. My skills were outdated, my professional network had dissolved, and I'd need time and money to get back into the job market. She advised me not to seek employment until after the divorce was finalized, because having a job could reduce my settlement significantly. The courts would calculate support based on our current situations, and if I suddenly had income, it would change everything. Then Rebecca asked if I wanted full custody. The question hit me hard because it made everything real. I told her I didn't mind Bethany seeing the girls occasionally on weekends, that despite what she'd done to me, she was still their mother and they loved her. But I wanted primary custody because I was the one who'd been raising them, the one who knew their routines, their friends, their teachers, their fears and dreams. Rebecca nodded and said that since Bethany had brought her affair partner into our home, putting our daughters at potential risk from a stranger, I had a strong case for full custody. The thought that this Jackson guy might have been in my house around my daughters made me physically ill. We agreed to pursue full custody with Bethany getting limited visitation, maybe 1 or 2 weekends per month, with the stipulation that no men could be around my daughters during her time with them. I wasn't going to have some affair partner playing stepdad to my girls. Rebecca told me to keep quiet about everything until the paperwork was ready. Then she'd arrange for someone to serve Bethany with divorce papers and an order to vacate the house. She expected everything to be ready within a week, maybe 10 days at most. She emphasized that I needed to act normal, avoid arguments, sleep separately, which I was already doing, and decline any closeness. I asked why all the secrecy, and she just said to trust her and follow instructions. She'd handled hundreds of these cases and knew the best strategy. The lawyer also suggested I get an STD test and paternity tests for my daughters. When I asked why, my voice probably betraying my panic, she said these situations are rarely isolated incidents. The affair I discovered might not be the first one, and I needed to protect myself and know the truth about my daughters. That thought terrified me to my core. The idea that Lily and Emma might not be mine, that everything I thought I knew about my life could be a lie. I went through with the tests. The STD results came back clean, which wasn't surprising since we hadn't been intimate in over a year. The paternity tests showed I'm the biological father of both girls. I'd never been so relieved in my life, even though I'd never seriously doubted it. Bethany was served with divorce papers at her workplace. According to my lawyer, it didn't go well, but I'll get to that later. She was also served with an order to vacate the house, and my lawyer handled getting her removed. I was granted temporary full custody of the girls. My oldest knew something was wrong. One of her friend's parents had gone through a divorce, so she understood what was happening. She kept crying and begging me to let mommy come home. It broke my heart. My youngest just kept asking for her mommy and didn't understand why she couldn't come back. I felt like the worst father in the world. Part of me wondered if I should just let Bethany cheat and keep the family together for the girls' sake, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't model that kind of relationship for my daughters. Bethany moved in with her mother. My mother-in-law reached out and asked to meet with me. She didn't ask for details about what happened, but she begged me not to take her granddaughters away from her. I assured her that she was a wonderful grandmother, and as long as she could separate her daughter's mistakes from her relationship with the girls, she'd always be welcome in their lives. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. Bethany kept trying to call and text me, wanting to talk about us and fix things. Under my lawyer's guidance, we set up a communication system strictly for discussing the girls and nothing else. Thanksgiving was complicated. My mother-in-law asked if we could all have dinner together for the sake of the girls. I consulted my lawyer first, and he said it was fine as long as I made it crystal clear to Bethany through our communication app that this was only about the girls, not reconciliation. The girls had been begging to see their mom, so I agreed. When we arrived, Bethany hugged the girls, which was fine, but then she tried to hug and kiss me. I dodged her and greeted my mother-in-law instead. Throughout dinner, Bethany acted like we were still a happy couple, trying to engage me in conversation about Christmas plans and family vacations. I kept my responses short and helped my mother-in-law with cooking and cleanup instead. When my mother-in-law said a prayer before dinner, Bethany sat next to me and tried to hold my hand. I pulled away. I'm not religious, but I participated out of respect for my mother-in-law. After dinner, the girls wanted to watch a movie with their mom, which was our old family tradition. I reluctantly agreed, but when Bethany tried to cuddle next to me on the couch, I moved to a chair. My mother-in-law kept shooting her daughter angry glares throughout the evening. When the movie ended, the girls had fallen asleep, so I carried them to the car. As I went back inside to grab their bags, Bethany cornered me in the hallway, crying and begging to work things out. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law appeared and literally yanked her daughter away by the hair, then firmly told me goodnight. I talked to my lawyer afterward and made it clear there was zero possibility of reconciliation. Bethany kept calling and begging, but I left her messages unread. The girls started therapy. The first session went well and they seemed more at peace afterward. The second session was a disaster. The therapist had explained to them, in age-appropriate terms, that their mother had betrayed me by having an affair. When I picked them up, they were sobbing and clinging to me, saying they loved me. I asked the therapist why she'd told them so soon, and she explained that kids aren't stupid. They could sense the tension and my coldness toward their mother. They wanted to know why we were separating, and she believed honesty was crucial for their healing. My oldest might be able to process it better, but my youngest was really struggling. When we got home, they wouldn't let go of me. They cried all night. I ordered takeout, put on their favorite movies, and we all stayed in my bedroom until they fell asleep. Then I went to the bathroom and completely broke down. The therapist suggested medication to help them adjust, but I refused. I didn't want to sedate my kids. She understood and said it was just an option. As for Christmas, I didn't have to worry about coordinating with Bethany because my daughters told me they didn't want to see their mother. My oldest said she never wanted to see her again, and my youngest seemed to agree. I tried to tell them that despite everything, their mother loved them and they shouldn't hate her. My oldest insisted she didn't love us anymore, and they both cried themselves to sleep in my arms. I decided to reach out to the affair partner's wife. I found his contact information in some of Bethany's work documents and called the number. His wife answered. When I told her about the affair, she didn't believe me and hung up. But she called back an hour later and asked to meet. We met in a parking lot and I showed her all the evidence in my car. She broke down immediately, asking how he could do this to her. I gave her my lawyer's contact information and tried to comfort her. She asked how long the affair had been going on, and I told her about a year, maybe longer. That's when her sadness turned to pure rage. I asked why she was so angry, and she removed her wig. She'd been battling cancer after their child was born. Over the past year and a half, she'd undergone 2 surgeries and chemotherapy. While she was in the hospital fighting for her life, her husband was sleeping with my wife. She and her husband hadn't been intimate for about 2 years because of her pregnancy complications and cancer treatment. She'd finally beaten the disease and was starting to feel like herself again. She'd wanted to surprise her husband with closeness now that she felt ready, but discovering his affair destroyed that plan. She cried about her child growing up in a broken home. She tried to get close to me physically, but I gently declined, explaining that neither of us was in the right state of mind for that. She thanked me for my honesty and asked for copies of the evidence. We exchanged numbers and stayed in touch. Christmas morning, I set up presents from Santa for the girls. This might be the last year my oldest believes in Santa, so I wanted to make it special. They woke up excited and tore into their gifts. We watched a movie together and they fell asleep on the couch. Later, I made breakfast with my youngest, helping me while wearing her new apron. They spent the morning playing with their toys, and it warmed my heart to see them happy. In the evening, I took them to see their mother and grandmother. They didn't want to go, but their therapist had advised me to encourage their relationship with their mother for healthy development. Otherwise, Bethany could claim in court that I was alienating them. I dropped them off at my mother-in-law's house for an overnight stay. My lawyer said one night was fine, just not extended periods. That evening, the affair partner's wife came over. She'd arranged for her in-laws to watch her toddler so the father could spend Christmas with them. She arrived dressed nicely, wearing a pretty wig. We had dinner together and talked about our pasts, getting to know each other better. After dinner, we watched a movie on the couch and I opened a bottle of wine. I don't drink much, but I enjoy a particular wine on Christmas. After confirming she could have some, I poured her a glass. As we drank, our conversation became more candid. We talked about our intimate preferences, what we missed, what we desired. I told her she could take off the wig if she was more comfortable without it, and I complimented her pixie cut. She removed the wig and teared up, thanking me. We continued talking and eventually ended up cuddling while watching the movie. Out of habit from when Bethany and I used to cuddle, I gently rubbed her chest. When she said it felt good, I startled and immediately apologized. She told me it was fine and asked if I could continue because it helped her relax. I asked again to be sure, and she confirmed. I have to admit it started to turn me on, and she noticed. She began touching me as well. I apologized awkwardly, and she asked if I wanted her to stop. I told her only if she wanted to. She didn't. We ended up kissing and things escalated from there. We were intimate throughout the house, eventually ending up in my bed where things became more passionate and emotional. Afterward, we lay together, both shedding tears before falling asleep. The next morning, we had breakfast and showered together. Before leaving, she asked if I felt anything special the night before. I told her the truth, yes. We agreed we needed to be cautious and make sure our feelings were genuine and not just reactions to our situations. She kissed me on the cheek, thanked me for a wonderful night, and promised to text later. The girls were doing better thanks to therapy and staying active. They still had tough moments, but overall they were improving. The woman I'd spent Christmas with and I talked almost daily, but we hadn't been physical since that night. We met once more and both agreed that while we didn't regret it, it probably shouldn't have happened. As for Bethany, she kept trying to get me to talk for a few weeks after Christmas, but that mostly stopped once she hired a lawyer. My lawyer was aware, and our meetings were scheduled to start soon. She'd finally accepted that I was done. She still called and texted trying to make me reconsider, but I left her messages unread. The affair partner got arrested. He'd confronted Bethany at her workplace, and they got into a heated argument. When she threatened to call the police, he physically attacked her. Co-workers intervened and held him until the police arrived. Bethany pressed charges. My mother-in-law told me about it and said I could visit Bethany if I wanted to. Apparently, he'd given her a black eye and split her lip. My mother-in-law said it was karma. I didn't visit, and neither did the girls. Things got harder for my daughters as the divorce date approached. They'd accepted the situation but had secretly hoped we'd somehow work things out. The reality was hitting them hard. My youngest was coping okay, but I was really worried about my oldest. She seemed depressed. The therapist suggested medication again, and I was still hesitant, but it was starting to look like it might be necessary. I noticed some of her clothes didn't fit well anymore, and I suspected she wasn't eating enough. Her doctor and I discussed adding nutrients to her food to help her gain weight. I felt like I was failing as a father. Meanwhile, the affair partner had skipped town. He'd disappeared right after getting bailed out for assaulting Bethany. It turned out Bethany was the last person to have contact with him. She'd planned to press charges, but he threatened to sue her, claiming she'd coerced him into the affair. She backed down, and he vanished. His parents claimed they had no idea where he went. It was during this rough period that I started going to the gym again, trying to reclaim some sense of control over my life. I needed to feel strong again, to rebuild the confidence that had been shattered. One afternoon, while I was finishing a set of bench presses, a guy I knew from the neighborhood came over. His name was Kyle, and we'd chatted a few times before. "Hey man, you doing all right?" he asked, clearly sensing something was off. I gave him the abbreviated version, going through a divorce, trying to get my head straight. He nodded sympathetically. I went through something similar a couple years ago, he said. Took me a while to get back on my feet, but I found this app that actually helped me rebuild my social life. It's called singletune.com. I raised an eyebrow. A dating app? Kyle shook his head. It's different. It's not about swiping on photos or chasing status. They use this specific frequency test to match people based on mutual respect and actual compatibility. It filters out the superficial stuff and connects you with people who are on your wavelength. I thought about it for a moment. Single tune, like tuning for singles or something? Maybe it's time to tune into a frequency where I'm actually appreciated. The idea of having control over who I connected with, of being valued for who I actually was rather than what I provided, felt empowering. Their slogan is single tune, no more static, just your tune, Kyle added. Might be worth checking out when you're ready. I thanked him and finished my workout feeling a little lighter, like maybe there was a path forward after all. The meeting with the lawyers was surprisingly drama-free. My attorney laid out my demands, especially pushing for full custody after the incident with the affair partner. Bethany's lawyer kept insisting we reconcile for the children's sake. My lawyer laughed it off and made it clear that reconciliation was off the table, reminding him of all the issues in her actions. He still pushed, but my lawyer simply said we'd see them in court. 2 weeks later, my lawyer called with news. Bethany had agreed to all the terms except having the girls every weekend. Instead, she'd get 2 weekends a month and alternating holidays. Initially, she'd wanted every weekend, but my lawyer negotiated it down. I agreed because despite everything, she's still their mother, and I hoped she'd learn to prioritize our girls. Bethany looked awful when I saw her at the lawyer's office. She'd lost a dramatic amount of weight, looked 10 years older, and even seemed to be losing her hair, despite not loving her anymore. It was hard to see her like that, because she's the mother of my daughters. I asked my mother-in-law to help her, but she said it was her punishment. I reminded her that Bethany was still her granddaughter's mom and needed to be there for them. My mother-in-law agreed to work with her to get back on track. Bethany left me a note asking to meet one last time in public before the divorce to talk things through. I agreed, and we met at the park where we used to take the girls. I recorded everything just in case. Most of our conversation focused on the girls, and she actually agreed it was best for them to stay with me full-time. I failed miserably as a mom, she admitted. I need to figure out how to do it right. Just as I was about to leave, she asked if we could call off the divorce, go to counseling, and give our relationship another try. I didn't hesitate to say no. I reminded her of everything she'd done to me, how she'd let her affair partner disrespect me, how he'd even abused his own wife and child, which she'd known about. I brought up all the trauma she'd inflicted on our girls. Do you really think you deserve a second chance? I asked. She admitted she didn't. I was worked up by then. I started listing all the sacrifices I'd made for her, how I'd given up my career for her and our daughters, how I'd tried everything to make her happy. She began to cry, but I kept going until I ran out of steam. She apologized, and I told her sorry wasn't enough anymore. Out of nowhere, I asked her what was going through her mind when she started the affair. She suddenly blurted out, "I wanted to be the one at home." I was taken aback. Then she spilled everything. She confessed she'd never wanted to run her dad's business. She'd wanted me to take it over and manage it. She didn't want the long hours and stress. She dreamed of being a stay-at-home mom and wife, with me as the breadwinner while she cooked, cared for our girls, and enjoyed the homemaker life. She'd never wanted the burden of owning a business. When she finally stopped talking, she looked exhausted. I asked why she'd made me quit my job and told me she wanted to run the business. She said she'd wanted me to insist on taking over. I was dumbfounded. But it's not my business, and I have no experience in that field. How could I run it? I pointed out how irresponsible it would have been for me to take over her dad's business without any knowledge. Then I asked why she hadn't just told me she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. She admitted she'd wanted me to figure it out because she was too proud to say it herself. All this because of your pride? I was furious. I told her I wouldn't have cared if she'd been honest about wanting to stay home. I asked what this had to do with the affair. She explained that during the pandemic, she was working long hours and grew jealous and angry seeing me at home with the girls. The affair partner noticed this and started bad-mouthing me, saying things like how if I were a real man, she could stay home. That's how the affair began. She claimed she'd tried to end it, but he manipulated her by making her feel jealous of what she could have had. This jealousy made her treat me horribly. All of this could have been avoided if we'd communicated better from the start, she said. I just want my family back and for things to go back to normal. I was so devastated and furious that I couldn't stay there any longer. I got up and left. Then she dropped one more bomb. Late last year, she'd been pregnant with the affair partner's child. She'd had an termination and didn't tell anyone. My mother-in-law had noticed she was acting strange but thought she was just seeking attention. That's another reason why she'd been in such a bad place during all this. Despite my reservations, we decided to put my oldest daughter on medication for a while. I discussed it with her primary doctor, therapist, and Bethany. She'd be on the lowest dosage possible, and once things stabilized, we'd gradually reduce it. My youngest seemed to be adjusting well with no major issues. She wished we could live together again, but understood why we couldn't. The divorce was finalized in early July. The affair partner never resurfaced. The woman I'd spent Christmas with and I continued talking daily. We took things slowly, both of us healing from our respective betrayals. Eventually, we started dating properly, building something genuine based on mutual respect and understanding. My daughters gradually adjusted to the new normal. They saw their mother on scheduled weekends, and while the relationship was strained, they were working on it in therapy. Bethany got help and slowly started to rebuild her life and her relationship with the girls. As for me, I started taking online courses to update my skills and eventually found part-time work that allowed me to still be present for my daughters. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And after everything I'd been through, honesty was exactly what I needed.